Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Did this go live or not? Cool.
Hello, everybody. I know it's not live yet on Self-Perfected, but it's a recording.
What's up, people?
Hello.
I'm
We're
hitting
here.
go live and
I'm stalling for time. It's going. We're live. It's recording.
I'm
This
getting
is only
an
for the
error.
YouTube people.
Well, we'll just
Error.
talk while
Yeah,
Rick
YouTube
figures that
exclusive.
out. So it's what episode is this? 112 or something or 113? Man,
Nice.
Ooh,
it's crazy.
wow.
We were just talking earlier. I was just thinking about bringing this up, like how if you go back and listen to like the first podcast, because we started this podcast back in like it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, right, Mitch? I mean, or like
Yeah,
maybe
it was
partway
like
through.
2020 had, yeah,
I can't remember exactly.
early
when.
2020, I believe.
It was like early.
Wasn't it like
2020.
after
It was like
George Floyd?
February.
or something,
February.
like-
Wait, no.
It just so happened.
Yeah, it
to
was
fall.
February 2020.
February.
Wait,
Isn't that when self-perfected?
Okay,
That's
I'm just gonna,
Self-Perfected began.
I'm just gonna
Self-Perfected began
fucking
then.
look it up.
All right,
and then-
somebody's gonna figure it out.
In like May, June. It was after George Floyd.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
That's
It was after
or
George Floyd?
or just before George
Really?
Floyd. It was
Hang
just
on,
before
hang on.
George Floyd.
It was around that time. I remember because Mitch
I'm
was
gonna
talking about
say-
his city burning, his like apartment.
I remember
burning
that,
down.
but man, that was that
2
early
years
in the-
ago. Well, that's not specific. It literally just says 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Great.
So I've noticed that YouTube has done this thing where they've taken off the specific date, so you can't even see when the specific
Hey,
date of videos was.
Kind of some
anymore.
1984 vibes right there.
Yeah, and so
Mhm.
now it's only like
Okay.
4 months ago, 2 years
They
ago.
just replace us with deepfakes. They're like, yes, you must trust that this is all safe and effective. We're just like system agents.
The Emperor's new clothes.
Yo, that
Hi,
was
just coming
crazy.
in.
That video
Okay.
you sent about
Talk about
The
it, yeah.
first episode was published July 20th, 2020.
Wow,
Ooh,
okay.
July. Okay.
That was
All
off.
right. That makes
Nice.
sense.
Wow.
Took us a little
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
cool because going all the way back then, we were talking about the pandemic. We were talking about all of the stuff like
Yeah, mass brainwashing, all of that.
that was
Yeah, we
way
were talking
before
about
anybody was talking
before it
about
was
mass formation hypnosis or whatever the hell thing is. Like,
Psychosis.
The
Yeah.
social credit system, China.
dude,
Hey, now that
there's so
new
many
stuff
points we
about
can get into. Yeah, go ahead.
now that stuff about China, that interview, I've been listening to that. Peter
Tell
Zehan
me.
or whatever that dude's name
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
interesting.
There's like a lot of predictions that China's population is going to collapse in the next like 20 years.
He said decade.
Yeah.
He said within the decade.
That
Homer.
was
So
pretty insane.
I want to tell Mitch. I told you my conspiracy theory about it, right? Or I was told maybe it was you, Drake, or somebody. I was telling somebody about my
I
conspiracy
want to
theory.
hear it.
about
I
Ray
love a good
Dalio.
conspiracy theory.
Oh
Ray
yeah.
Dalio.
You were telling me.
You've been
Yeah.
pretty
told you,
accurate
yeah.
with your predictions. So
Here's
let's
my
hear
Ray
it.
Dalio conspiracy, right?
Uh-huh.
Ooh.
Okay, so you know that video he put out that was like the next world order, or do you remember what it was
Yeah.
called? Something like
Yeah.
that.
Next world order.
it was
Changing
like-
world order.
Changing world
world
order. Yeah.
But he's making it all like it's all moving to China's the next empire, right?
Yeah.
But then if you look at that point about the population collapse point, because like why didn't he bring any of that up?
Right.
Like why didn't he handle it as an objection of like, oh no, some people are going to say that you're gonna have this pop. He didn't even bring it up. So my conspiracy theory is that China's not the next empire. And there was an article I remember, or no, it was just somebody talking about. I wish I could remember what it was. It was some video where they were just discussing the point of like how with the pandemic, we saw the US. Oh, it was the one with that colonel. Remember that one with that colonel? No, it's a general, that general.
Spalding.
Remember? Spalding.
Yeah, Spalding.
Where he was saying how, or well, the interviewer was saying whatever, that with the pandemic, we brought in a lot of things that you would think normally wouldn't happen in America. There were more things that would happen in China.
Yeah.
Right. And then I remember seeing something from, was it Klaus Schwab, I think, where he was like, the interesting thing about, I'm paraphrasing, about the vaccine passports and the this and that and all that stuff that happened, all these restrictions, was that unlike China where they forced you to do it, in America, everyone chose it. It was like we freely, I mean, you could argue how much coercion was done.
Harari.
Obviously.
That's who it
A lot
was.
of
Yuval
conversion.
Noah Harari was talking
Yeah,
about.
it was that interview, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you kind of put all that together, and I think it's a conspiracy of like Ray Dalio is just preparing everybody to feel like China's taking over, but it's really just the authoritarian, it's the methods of China. That's the new empire. Does that make sense? It's the authoritarian, communistic, control every aspect of your life and so forth through technology. That's what's the new empire, not China per se. It's like China like culture. You see what I mean? And you see it happening. Like when we're watching it happen right now. And man, what was I heard this thing from about Putin said recently. He did some speech like the other day, I guess, like a 30-minute speech in front of a big crowd in like Russia, obviously. And he was saying that the West is like satanic, right? And he was saying how like in the West, it's like totally satanic. And then they're doing medical experimentation on children and telling them they can change their gender and all this shit. And I'm like, fuck, he's not wrong about that. Like, I mean, I'm not all like, let's let Russia take over, but it's like, fuck, like he's not wrong.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. I was seeing something and I don't know, it was a meme, so I don't know the details of this particular meme, but you know how that the Peter guy was talking about, there is like a place where they're taking all this oil and they're depositing it somewhere off the coast of Russia, or I don't know, but I don't remember the particulars of what was going on, but it was essentially there's a tanker that's moving a lot of oil to a particular place because they don't have the access to because he was talking about how the US is no longer going to be controlling the seas as we once were, right? And he's basically saying it's more of like a logistical thing than anything, because we have these massive destroyers, but they're not able to move at the speed of like a speedboat or whatever. And so
he was like saying they have like an aircraft carrier that's equal to, and one carrier is like equal to like the 9 navies, like the navies of like 9 countries or something.
Right.
And he's and we have like 7 of them or something like that or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And but his point was like, but you can't like easily move that from here to there. So you can't use it to patrol the seas to like stop pirating and stuff. Yeah. I just want to put context here.
Yeah. So with that, he was saying that there currently right now, there's like a few $1 billion worth of oil that is just sitting out there that's coming from Russia. And I don't remember where it's supposed to be going, but he was saying there's just currently just oil just sitting there and he's waiting.
Where's this at? Where's the oil? Let's ask him for a friend.
But that was the point he was making, was like, he's like, I'm surprised nobody's just come and grabbed it as of yet, because like it's just sitting there, and this would totally destroy the oil market based on, he was saying Russia only has, I think, about $5 billion worth of insurance to protect this. And that's all they have, like cash on hand, something to that effect. And he said, so if someone were to take this oil that's just sitting out there and there's no one there to protect it or anything, it would completely cripple Russia. But also at the same time, it would make the oil market, he said, it would have this effect where it would be about 5% of all crude oil in circulation or whatever. There'd be 5% less, right? And that's a huge problem, because it doesn't seem like, 5%, who cares? But that would make a huge difference, and it could easily triple the price of oil, right? And he's like, and there's your energy crisis right there, right?
And ironically, it's not in circulation already.
Yeah,
it's like literally just sitting there anyways.
Right.
But if someone else takes it, then now it's not in the circuit, and you're like, it's a fucking game, man.
It is. And so it's interesting because the meme that I saw was like, Russia invests billions into Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. And then it's like, the meme where it's like somebody putting on clown makeup, right? And then, it's like the US sends drones to where this Russian oil is stored, but claims that they were just surveying. And then Russia blows up their own Nord Stream pipes. Wow.
Putting the wig on.
Yeah, full wig on and everything. Like, it was just like, it was basically saying like, oh, somehow Russia's going to destroy their own billions of pipes and blame it on the US. and so
Oh, but false flags, those don't happen, guys. Come
Right.
on. Like there's no way that the US would have done anything like that on any days that are similar to the number we use for emergency calls in the United States. It's not like anyone would ever conceive of that being possible.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either.
Okay.
I'm just kind of triggered though, just you saying that.
Never forget, Mitch. Never forget.
Oh, there was a meme. It was kind of a dark meme, but it was like, I got to remember the pipeline. Okay, it was like the two 9/11 towers, and it was like never forget. And then it showed building 7. It was like definitely forget.
Yeah, it's a forget.
Forget.
Yeah, I love it. That was so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of fun. But
But I want to let's just finish the point about China, the population collapse. For anybody who doesn't know, it was that Chris Williamson. So go look up his channel if you can watch that video. It's really good. But it was the point of the population of China. It's like they don't have a replacement generation. So they have like all these old people, and then they're not going to have anyone to replace that with because the one child policy and all this other shit. There was another point in there that was really interesting. Oh, tied to that, he was talking about with the US, we do have a replacement generation, which is the
Yeah.
Gen Z.
I thought that was really interesting.
But so he's like, there's going to be like another baby boomer sort of generation. But the interesting thing he said was that millennials, this was just his analysis. Obviously, he said millennials are like really friendly, positive, outgoing, all this stuff, social. Do you remember that video? Did y'all see that one? It was like the day in the life of a tech worker or whatever in New York.
Oh yeah.
The woman, and she's like, I woke up and I got my frappuccino latte,
Yeah.
and then she's like, okay, go into a meeting, guys. But first I'm going to stop and get my pumpkin spice chai frappa latte. Okay. And it's like, everything's just her getting like a latte and like having
Yeah.
lunch. You're like, what do you fucking do otherwise?
I spent some time in the relaxation meditation room.
But it's like, it's all
No,
about
they were
like,
two
oh,
separate rooms. The
Yeah,
relaxation
yeah.
room was a different room. Than
But it's cool because at a certain level, it's like you're out there, you want to be around and have fun and like do all this stuff, right? Versus his assessment was Gen Z is just like their dream job is they want to sit in their room alone coding in the dark.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's really difficult to have kids. So you're gonna have a baby boomer generation type size that doesn't want to have kids and doesn't want to be in relationship. And we already know like the suicide rates are higher. They're all trans fucking gender and all this whatever shit and like all that.
Yeah.
So they're all fucked, right?
I think the point that he was making was that like the US experiences like a curve in their population.
Mhm.
So instead of having like this upside down pyramid, which is what a lot of countries are experiencing right now, the US has like the baby boomers, then Gen X, then millennials, then the Zoomers, and then the millennials will be having kids that will expand, and the Zoomers will shrink again. And like that's kind of the pace of the US population.
I
So
prefer
when
more
you
of a
look at it-
pyramid. I prefer more of just a pyramid.
I prefer
Where would you be on the pyramid, Mitch? Would you be kind of more like at the bottom? Or the
No,
middle?
I'd be like I want to be at the top of the
at
pyramid.
the apex of that pyramid. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Do you have any sort of a scheme to get to that point, or
That's
Just
for
ponder your
the
areas.
yeah, that's for paying members only. We don't.
It's for the behind
that's for his
closed doors.
OnlyFans?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You literally, your OnlyFans is you sitting on top of a pyramid.
So it's not gonna be those guys having the babies. It's
Okay,
gonna
okay,
be
okay.
guys having babies.
It's
No,
ours.
well-
It will be those guys having.
it will be
babies.
guys
It will be
having
guys.
babies.
Yeah.
That
But
shit
I
is
see-
definitely
but I
not
see your point.
possible.
Yeah.
But so when you look at it from that perspective, everything is set up for the US to remain stable, actually, from that perspective. The idea that, maybe it's like a point of, look, China's taken over, just give up, just accept it. But it's like a distraction. You know what I mean? It's like they're blaming China for the authoritarian takeover. When in reality, it's like, who do you trust more? I mean, I'm not saying I would trust the Chinese government, but like, do you trust Facebook anymore? Do you trust YouTube? Do you trust any? I just saw this this video this morning. I was showing Katie from this doctor. I think I sent it to y'all. It's the guy. His name is
Yeah. He's talking about like California.
I don't see his name on here. Yeah, but it's like he's this doctor, and he's been pretty interesting. Because I like to have a balance, I don't want everybody who's just like straight up David Icke, like it's 5G towers causing, this guy's like a little bit more balanced in terms of his view of COVID and all that stuff. So he's not going to give you the extreme, but it's like you get the other side of things, right? But anyways, he was saying that in California, they literally just signed a bill. The governor signed it, that he went through some parts of it that is going to make it so that the board, like the medical licensing board, has, actually, I don't know if it's the board itself or it's just the government. I mean, I guess that's probably a wing of the government. If doctors spread misinformation or disinformation, and he went through it, like if it's disinformation, there has to be like intent to deceive, but if it's misinformation, like he went through like all this different stuff, right? And he was saying that the misinformation was defined based on what is the current, contemporary medical consensus.
Yeah.
So if a doctor,
ridiculous.
And so if a doctor were to like talk about an ivermectin or something like that, but it's against the consensus, they can lose their license. And I didn't see what the consequence. I stopped watching halfway through because
so that to me is so fascinating, because that means consensus cannot change. That you're
right.
How could you stipulation? Because like if you disagree, if you're a dissenter, then it's like you're against the consensus and you're removed.
Well, but consensus can change because like someone like the WHO.
Okay, so it can only change from an authority standpoint,
right?
Like
pyramid,
like yeah, from the top
this
of
fucking shape.
but it can only change from like, hey, I'm the authority. I say, and this is crazy because it ties in with what's going on with YouTube and their censorship and what they've said about how, listen, we are only going to promote videos, even with our algorithm. We will slow down your video if it goes against, or if it's considered borderline. And it's the really interesting thing is they're using this language that's really vague and that can be interpreted however they see fit. And so if they want to push a little bit harder on you, they just say, yeah, well, that doesn't go with the current consensus. And like, wait, whose consensus is this? Oh, no, just this one government agency said it, even though all doctors learned something completely different in school. But this is the current consensus. Like, this is a contemporary consensus. So you need to go along with this. It's
the purpose of our videos, by the way, is not to go viral, just anybody watching it. It's to support the person who's listening to it, who's like a part of the group. And it's, you know what I mean? And I hope it's entertaining and all that too. But do you think they're slowing us down?
I mean, they're definitely not promoting us.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I guarantee you it's being slowed down.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot more people that would enjoy it and listen to it. I mean, obviously there is a level where what we talk about is so specific to the context of Self-Perfected that if you're not in it, you might not have the context to even be interested in listening further. That's a possibility. And that's why it's all about like showing people like who and so forth. We're not looking for the algorithms to support us, but I guarantee you there's also a level of throttling based on what we're talking about. Because we're like,
especially after that,
we go beyond the borderline. We go way beyond the,
the word Nazi land in the last one.
Yeah.
If I'm not on a podcast, the next thing you know, I'm seeing the title Nazi
funny.
land. I'm like,
on the Facebook Live, I don't know if this is always here, but it's like very boldly the community standards. And then when I click on it, it's like no bullying, no all this stuff.
Because they know what we're talking about.
Are they warning us?
That's what they're trying to say. They're like, these guys are assholes.
See, they say no bullying, but like for 4 years while Trump was president, the entire media apparatus was bullying them the whole time, and also people who supported him.
Or if you
but I
don't
mean,
wear a
he's like,
mask,
oh, he's a
you're
big
bullied.
boy, blah blah. But it's like now you're just bullying even more.
If you're, were you not wearing a mask or didn't get a COVID vaccine? People were
Yeah.
They're like, and what's interesting is if you're on the side of the consensus, you're allowed to use the argument that, well, I'm allowed to do that if you're harming people.
Yeah.
But we're taking it to the full point of like, what is actual harm? It's like when you're not operating in a way that's best for all, that's actual harm.
There is another video that
But you're
sent.
giving me the right to bully because it's based on the actions of the person, of what everyone is doing. It's not based on what they're saying. They can say, oh, you shouldn't bully people, but they're doing it. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. You're talking about the consensus, or like when you have the consensus, you're allowed to say this is harming people. There's another video that you sent where this guy was a cardiologist talking about how his dad died suddenly And it was like, I looked at my dad's heart. He
He's
was
like,
very
I'm a
healthy
world-renowned
lifestyle.
expert cardiologist.
Yeah.
And I've known this. I know my dad. I know his heart conditions, or not conditions, but the state of his heart, all that.
Yeah.
He was like, this was
Yeah.
random, right?
Yeah. And then he was like, talking about how the research center at that UK university was trying to squash the research that they did. They were trying to just like, oh, we got to bury this somewhere, because their research showed literally that the vaccines were causing cardiac arrest. And he was like,
there it's throttled.
Strike. But he was saying how they were trying to squash that, and because they were just looking at their own interests, like their funding. They're like, listen, we're not going to get any funding anymore if we produce this as is, if we publish this as is, rather. And then, just all those points tied in together with what he was also seeing as far as like cardiac arrests or cardiac events, the increase from 2020 to 2021 of like by a measure of like 14,000, which is just like, that's really significant. All of that, the thing that he started out with saying was, I believe that there are good people, but they've been put into a position where they are doing bad things. And he's like,
what does that mean to be good then?
Right. But it's like, so, okay. But it's interesting because I was just reading Jerry Spence, how to argue and win every time. Right. And towards the end, he's making these arguments about like if you were in a job, how to argue for a raise, right? And he's like, well, first you got to understand, if you're in a job, you're not arguing with your boss. You're arguing with a corporate system, a corporation, right? And he's saying, what is a corporation? You have to understand what is a corporation. And he gave this great story of how I guess back in some days, Ford made a car called the Pinto, right? And the Pinto had a flaw in whenever it was impacted in any sort of way, the gas tank would just explode and it would just spread gas everywhere, right?
Like a
And then
Pinto
that would cause like, likely cause fires and things like that. What'd you say?
She said
Like
like
a
a pinto bean.
Yeah.
That's what happens when I eat them. My ass explodes. Only if someone bumps me in the rear, though, which is
that's how it's supposed to happen. But so they knew about this prior to marketing the car, prior to getting it out, and they had done some calculations and they said, okay, it's going to cost us $11 per gas tank to fix this problem. And they said, but how much would it cost us if someone were to die from this? And they were just going and crunching the numbers, and they were like, okay, so the average death cost this much that we have.
Imagine even doing the calculation,
right? And they're like, okay,
instead of
so
just going like, clearly we should stop this.
Right. So after all said and done with lawyer fees, all that, they're like, it's going to cost us $200,000 per death. And then they did the calculation of like how many accidents happen and like what's the likelihood of their car getting into an accident, all that stuff. And they said, okay, here's what we can expect for the amount of our cars that will be in this accident. And here's how many people will die from that. And they're like, okay, that's going to cost us like $49 million if we put out this car like this. But if we fix it, it's going to cost us $11 per car. And that's going to cost us $139 million. So we'll just take the heat on it. Like
literally.
Yeah. And they put out the cars like that. And
so this was before
they knew, before they put out the cars, before they even marketed it, they knew that this was going to happen. They continued to market it. They continued to put it out as is. And it cost like lives, like people died. Men, women, children, like on the hundreds, the scale of hundreds died because they did this. Now, okay, if you consider that, it makes this great analogy. If you consider that as like a person went out and set people's houses on fire and people died, that would be considered murder. If they knew that that was going to happen, that would be considered murder. And we would try that person. They would be convicted right away, right? Yet this corporation gets away with doing this. They get a slap on the wrist. No one's criminally convicted. No one's held accountable. There's no responsibility. Not the person who figured out, oh, hey, we have a flaw in this gas tank that causes this problem. Not the person who's like, oh, well, let's do the math on how much it's going to cost us in debt. Not the people marketing it. Not the president of the company. Nobody was held accountable for this, right? And so the point is, it's like it's interesting because we can blame, oh, it's the businesses, it's the corporations. They just, this system is messed up. It's like, but literally it's people that have the starting point of, I want to make profit first. And that's what's most important. And that's what we've all collectively decided. And so then we allow that to happen. And then we just go, oh, well, are you going to go to jail? No, I'm not going to go to jail. No, we're good. Let's keep going.
Isn't that what's happening with Pfizer right now too?
That's exactly the point that I'm making. That's exactly the point, right? It's like, we can't be surprised that this is happening on this level.
Did y'all see this?
What's this?
I sent this to y'all.
Oh yeah. With the CDC.
I just want you to read blurry, like.
I already wear glasses, and this is fucking me up, man.
It's a tweet from the CDC on September 20th. The estimated number of patients needing anticoagulants, which is for blood clots, is expected to double by 2050. Venous thromboembolism, like literally blood clots, and that's literally the thing everyone's talking about is what's being caused by these mRNA.
Right. And nobody can fucking read. Well, not nobody, but the majority cannot read. Right.
And so look,
can't put it together.
It's like you had to know. They knew about this beforehand. Oh, and also we know about that because in the trials, that cardiologist was even saying, in the trials, it was a red flag. You were having way more cardiac events.
It was like 5-1 or something.
Yeah. Then in the placebo group, it's like, maybe we should look at that. And what's crazy about it, the craziest thing to me about that is they use such a small trial group, and that still is happening. That's like, okay, all right.
Now, the crazy thing to me is that placebos cause heart attacks. I want to know, how do we get rid of what's in these placebos? That's what I want to figure out. Something weird there.
No one should ever have a heart attack, ever. But seriously,
is it weird that it's like predominantly affecting men from 16 to 39?
Right,
I think so.
Exactly.
It's like the system is like, we hate men, and then this vaccine comes out that like literally is attacking those people.
Yeah,
it's like, well, you're gonna hate them when they're gone. You're not gonna hate them when they're gone. You're gonna be missing them.
Christine, weren't you saying there was like an article that you saw that was like mRNA being transferred through
the breast milk? I saw that.
Yeah,
but
also what they're finding with the mRNA vaccine specifically is that normally when you get a vaccine and they inject it in your arm, it stays pretty localized, whatever's in the vaccine. With this vaccine, because it is like mRNA technology, it does travel around the body, and it's being found in like specific tissues. So
Right.
It's like they're finding it in like ovaries, uterus, heart, like those are the big ones. And then it really depends on like what this person's makeup. So like people tend to have like more weak tissues. So it's just finding itself in like their weak tissues. But the most common ones are the heart and the ovaries and the uterus. And then for some guys, like in their testicles, basically. So it's crazy because I know people who are in healthcare and they're like, I have had way more clients come in or patients come in with miscarriages, can't get pregnant or something, basically.
So, but
And
the
then
consensus in
myocarditis.
California, they're saying, well, the consensus says it's not because of this. Then the point that guy was making in that video, that doctor that I was referring to, was he was like, once the wheels are greased, he said, meaning like once it's established, this is the way things are now, there's going to be so much fear that they like, you wouldn't even hear the nurse say anything anymore or the doctor, because they're like, well, someone could report me. Because now even mentioning it, they could be reported for spreading some misinformation, because you might think they implied it was because of the vaccine or this or that.
Oh, so this would be
no
like
questioning of authority.
this would be like you can't even have those like Project Veritas videos anymore where they're like, some nurse is like, hey, this person's getting this like cardiac arrest, and this because California would be like sued for misinformation. This goes against scientific consensus, and then it's like, well, I guess.
No, it'd be really funny
What?
if someone was like, oh, I think I'm having a heart attack. And then they find out it was just like they ate something and it wasn't really good. And then the government sued them for spreading medical misinformation.
That's what's gonna happen in California.
That
It's
Newsom
gonna
guy is
be
busy right now lately though, because he just signed another bill that kids don't need their parents' consent to get the gender with the surgeries to become trans.
That guy's point also was that what'll happen is they're gonna do an amendment to the law, and then they'll take off the point of it has to be intent for disinformation for it to count. And then they'll take off the one that says it has to do with COVID, because right now it's specific to COVID. He's like, they'll amend it and they'll just make it for any disease.
Yeah.
Right. This is just like the foot in the door. Right.
And they'll just say, and previously, we've done this for other diseases like COVID. And so it's not that out of the ordinary. We're just making it so that it can be used generally. It's the same thing that's happening with like Amos Miller, right? Like completely switching topics now.
Let's do it.
But like I man, that thing is like crazy.
Give some context for people who don't know.
Amos Miller is an Amish farmer. He started.
He just sounds Amish. I mean, I don't even think you need
Amos. I mean, come on.
Doesn't he sound like he's from the Bible or something? But he started growing some food for himself, for his own family, for his community. And I guess the way that he likes to grow his food is he doesn't like to use antibiotics. He doesn't like to clean it with, chemicals and chlorine and things like that. Things that are normally what go on in our standard.
Cameron, that's what we forgot to do when we killed those turkeys at your house. We forgot to
just dip them in bleach.
Well,
and just
and I've
stir them
noticed,
around in Clorox.
it's hard for me to eat like real fresh turkeys and chicken because it doesn't taste the same as store-bought because it's not dipped in bleach. And then my tastes have become what it's supposed to taste like from the store. So it's like I've had to like start retraining my way I taste stuff.
Interesting. So anyway, this guy built a following of people who started coming to him because they're like, hey, I like the way that you produce meat, and I want meat that's like that. I don't want the store-bought shit. And so he created a private members club for those people who have come to him. And, again, he's Amish, so he's not like he's advertising like on social media.
It's not like Facebook marketing, like viral targeted ads.
Buy my shit. It's just people have.
It's literally word of mouth. Right?
Yeah, word of mouth, literally. And he's built a client base of like over 4,000.
So it's people who didn't die from his products.
People who did not die from his
products.
product.
Why are they going to recommend it?
Right. And they're like, man, we love this shit. And so basically the US government tried to sue him or basically just try to stop him as best they could, and claim that someone many years ago died from drinking some milk that he sold to them, which is not true, but they just like put something together and just said this person died and they were drinking your milk, sort of like dying with COVID. Interesting. Anyway, but they try to say that it was this guy's fault, and then
you know the whole thing behind that.
What's that?
Because I heard just the surface point that it was like, oh yeah, somebody got sick from this listeria or whatever, and then they had drank the milk.
Yeah, go for it.
The whole story is no, you tell it. It's good. I'll wait for you to finish.
No.
And then course correct.
Okay, all right.
No, it's great.
But the background story, I think what you're going to say is that his father was involved in, I think his father.
Oh, no. I was going to say the person who died.
Oh,
you know the full story?
That they died of cancer?
They actually just got the COVID vaccine.
It was there was this whole thing about, now I can't remember all the details because there was like several cases like this, but it was this whole thing with cancer, and it was like not at all related. And then they had.
That's right.
You might remember it better than me.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. This person had died of cancer, and they were basically, I think they were suing for like medical malpractice.
That's what it was. Yeah, I knew there was something shady about it. Yes, that's what
They were suing for medical malpractice, and then in order to get
because there was
them
something
off,
that was fucked up about their cancer treatment, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were trying to get insurance money or malpractice money or whatever,
right,
because of the cancer, right?
And so, in order to not pay for that, they said, "No, what we found in your system is this bacteria called
Listeria."
Yeah, Listeria. Okay, Listeria, and Listeria has been known to cause death. Well, not exactly. There's like 17 different strands of Listeria, and there's only 1 or 2 that actually can cause death.
It'd be like if I was like, "Oh, I know you were eating mushrooms, and some mushrooms are poisonous." It's like, yes, some mushrooms are poisonous, and some that look the same are poisonous. But if you were like, "Well, I saw you were eating a mushroom that looked like one of those poisonous ones," and you're like, did you test it? Was it actually one of the poisonous ones? So even the Listeria they had wasn't necessarily the poisonous one. They said it was just chemically similar.
Genetically similar, which would be like a mushroom is genetically similar to another.
Like genetically similar to
like
monkeys, you know?
Yeah,
like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. But you can see exactly like
they're keeping
this is not a poison.
Zoos. I saw it with my own eyes. They had things genetically similar to humans in zoos. You're like, you mean monkeys?
So they said that she had got this bacteria, and this bacteria came from this raw milk from
which they didn't prove either. They just said, oh, see, they had raw milk, and raw milk has sometimes been associated with Listeria, and they had Listeria in their body, so they died from that, not from the cancer.
Exactly.
Maltreatment or whatever.
Right.
So that's the thing they're using to say, see, someone died from his raw milk. So when you hear that story, there's this point where you're like, wow, but I mean, one person did get sick and die. So maybe it kind of puts that little doubt in you. And then you hear the whole story and you're like, oh, fuck, they literally, I mean, now imagine you're a lawyer, right? And you're like, okay, how am I going to make it so that they can't collect on this malpractice?
Right.
And you start doing research and you start going, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, but then they had this raw milk. Oh, they were into this raw milk because you're interviewing their family. You're like, okay, tell me more about that. And then you start doing research and you start connecting dots. And literally it's some fucking lawyer who's put all this together. And because they did that, now it's able to be used by the government here to further shut this guy down.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, did you see the one with I don't know if I sent it. It was like Viva Frey and Barnes.
Yeah. That was a good
the recent one.
Yeah.
where they were talking about how even people are saying like, well, but he wasn't supposed to sell interstate.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. This is like probably my favorite part of this is like they were talking about how the USDA has this rule that you're not supposed to sell. Like if you're growing shit in your home, whatever, you want to sell it to like maybe your neighbor, okay, whatever, but you're not supposed to sell that interstate. And the reason for that is because you're not supposed to enter the retail market. That's essentially what the baseline for that is. You're not supposed to enter the retail market with your bullshit that has not been approved by the USDA.
Like if it hasn't been gone through the USDA inspection process, you can't sell your stuff if you're in Tennessee in a Kroger or whatever you guys call your grocery stores in Montana or something, right? Because this hasn't been gone through that.
Mitch does not live in Montana. It's called Minneapolis.
Yeah, whatever.
Minnesota. Okay.
Minnesota.
But the cool thing that I found really fascinating about this was this, how the USDA standards even came into practice was because before that, people would just go and go to the local farmer or whatever, buy whatever they wanted. But there was this book called The Jungle by this guy named Upton Sinclair. And it talked about going into this like meat production factory in Chicago or whatever, and how disgusting it was. And they would take diseased meat and they would just mince it up and then repackage it and sell it. And, like all this bullshit, right?
Stuff that actually happens now, but yeah.
and well, the crazy thing is it was a book of fiction. It was a novel.
It was a novel.
Actual it wasn't something that like, oh, I'm just reporting this and this is what I saw. It was a completely fictional novel. And that was used, it was spread, and it was used as the basis for, okay, see, we have to regulate what goes on, because people were afraid of like, I don't want to be eating some diseased shit or like, that shit's that just been thrown on the floor or whatever. Like, no, I want clean shit. It scared people. This is what caused a lot of like the vegetarian movement as well here in the US. And then they also used it in Europe to say that the meat in the US is like, oh, it's terrible. The industry is terrible. You should never even considered getting meat from the US. All that, right, created, okay, the USDA, the original intent of the USDA, and this is why I brought it up, because it ties in with what we were just talking about with this doctor in California. The original intent of this was to say, okay, no, we just want to regulate the markets for the retail market. So if you're just, making your own food, you do whatever you want. Like, you have your own choice. If you want to go to your neighbor and buy food from him, that's fine. But if it goes into the retail market, we're going to regulate that. So we just make sure that, nobody's getting scammed or anything like that. We want to make sure everything's clean, all that.
And also, it's like you go into a store and the store is there. You don't know the farmer. You don't know where the meat came from. So if there's a certain part where it kind of makes sense that
right.
how they went from the logic of it.
Right.
But that's not what was happening with this Amish guy. He wasn't
right.
selling his meat in stores. It was all people who were specifically were saying, I like the way you're doing it. I want to eat that. It wasn't it was in the store. So it needs to have this inspection process because people are just walking in going, what's this meat? Oh, interesting. Oh, wait, this isn't inspected. I didn't know. It's not how it was happening. So even the interstate point, right, was being abused in terms of them saying, what's interesting is when I listen to the story, all of those points were the points that came up as doubts in my mind. Like the listeria, the raw milk listeria point, the interstate point. It was oh, well, but he was doing it interstate. It's like those are specifically put into the stories on purpose because they know what will create the doubt based on you not having the education of knowing, well, what's the real story behind why it can't be interstate?
Yeah.
It's go ahead.
The other interesting thing was that the USDA wasn't supposed to be necessarily a regulating body. More so, it was just a marketing piece to market to people. This is USDA.
If I want people to feel
have
safe
that sticker
when they buy it, I'm going to put this stamp on there, which makes it easier for me to sell because people have learned to trust that, but not because it should be a requirement to have it.
Right.
Because the whole,
Because in the US, we're supposed to have the freedom of choice of where we want to buy food and how we want that food and things like that. And so it was just really interesting because now what that's turned into is now they are a regulating body and now they're abusing those same rules that they put into place that was supposed to be for a completely different reason. It was supposed to let people like this guy, Amos Miller, if somebody came to him and wanted to buy from, fuck yeah, whatever, do what the fuck you want. But now they're abusing that. And they're even saying in this court proceeding, they're saying, okay, you need to write out every piece of food that your family is going to consume. It needs to say little Johnny is going to eat 3 pounds of pork this week. And so that's why I'm growing this pig or whatever. And then Susie is going to have, it's nobody does that. That's ridiculous. But that's absolutely insane. And this is how they want to regulate this guy. And more so another interesting point that they had made was how it was almost as if they were attacking this guy because he's Amish, doesn't have a social media following, he doesn't use technology. This story's not really going to get out there.
They said Amish people don't like publicity also. So
Amish people don't like publicity.
Make a big deal about it.
Right. And so essentially we'll be able to attack him.
And they don't like the legal system.
Yeah.
So they're not going to go into all of that. They're just going to be let's just try to,
Right. We'll be able to attack him, make an example out of him, and then use that against whoever else.
They'll use the case law.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll use the case law to push the. So it's this is how those things went from, it's just a stamp that you can put on the meat if you want to as marketing, how they get it to suddenly, now it's a law that you have to do it and you can go to jail for it. And they were talking about the abuse of utilizing the threat of imprisonment through contempt of court when there's not even a trial. There's not even a jury. It's a civil thing, but then they're using the contempt point to put people in prison because they're not paying the fine. So they're circumventing the actual quote justice system by putting people in prison just straight up because they're not following the rules that they're setting and manipulating and so forth.
Yeah.
So you talk about China's going to take over. And if you actually start connecting all the dots of all the different things that are happening in our own country, in America, it's it's already going in that direction.
You guys, this is why it's so key what we're doing. I mean, I know all y'all obviously realize this, but just to reemphasize this point is can y'all imagine 5 years from now if we weren't doing this? and we weren't consistently building this community and getting all these new people in, and people that are now able to actually read, able to help their kids read, learn how to build a business, not have to go to a job, learn how to be a true entrepreneur. And if we weren't doing that, I mean, can you see how in 5 years it's going to be too late? Because now the average person can't even fucking fathom what this Amos Miller case is about, or they can't see how that's also connected to then this whole push towards, don't eat meat and rather eat these cricket burgers and whatever the fuck Bill Gates is trying to shove down your throat. It's like, this is why it's so critical that we build Self-Perfected and we get more people to listen to this podcast and go implement it and then go, use the tools that we talk about. It's like, without this, the world is absolutely fucked. Who else can teach people how to read and put the points
think
together?
about that. What are the elite right now are leveraging the fact that people can't read. They have an education system that they built over 100 years, which systematically on purpose brainwashes people into being slaves, into only thinking about. That's why people they need to teach financial literacy in schools. People always say this. I see this shit on Facebook. And It's that's like saying the factories need to teach entrepreneurship. Like, why the fuck would they do that? That doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Like that you're it's like you're complaining to the person beating you that like they're hurting you. And it's like, yeah, they're doing it on purpose to control you. Like, they know it. Why are you complaining to them? But that's really what it is like, if the whole point is to change the system, how are you going to do that without a bunch of highly educated people who can connect the dots and see through all this shit? How are you going to do that without
It's
ultimately
impossible.
a population that's not able to be manipulated? And from day one, this is what we've been explaining, is the point is to create a population that when laws are passed or things are voted for or politicians are talking, people can actually not only see through the bullshit, but not be emotionally manipulated based on limited information. Because like I was showing, even within myself, I could see how I was being manipulated, even though I didn't participate in it. I was still aware of the thoughts coming up of like, oh, well, weird. It did. That person did die of the listeria, and he did do it interstate. And then you go into the actual details of it and you're like, oh, why am I actually justifying why people shouldn't be allowed to sell their stuff interstate?
Right.
Why am I even accepting that that's like a valid point?
Yeah.
That'd be like if I was like online on Amazon and I was like, oh, I want to buy this new TV. And then it's like, sorry, you live in Texas. We're not allowed to sell this in Texas. I'm like, what? That's not fair. Like, that's the one I want. They're like, sorry, the government says blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's the fucking, I already know what it is. And so then the point becomes, now the authority is consensus, but not real consensus, because real consensus would be freely consented to. Yeah.
Right.
It'd be common sense.
Yeah, exactly. It would be, people have the vocabulary and the ability to see the point, and so everyone's in agreement based on that.
Yeah.
But when everybody is in fear, you can't trust what they're saying, what they're thinking, because they're in fear. So if the doctor is like, no, you really shouldn't, take ivermectin. It actually is really bad. But in the back of their mind, they're just like, I fucking know so many people who have been helped for it, but I can't tell my patient this right now.
And then there are people that have died of vaccine, and then one person who has died of raw milk. Like, that doesn't even add up either. It's like, you're allowing...
And then you see even the one person that didn't. And so it's all a fucking scam. And then the people who legitimately are dying from all these experimental things. Oh, no, that's not valid. And that's not the consensus and all this stuff. And it's like this total double thing where people know the fucking truth, but in their mind, they're like, I can't say the truth. I have to say what's said because I will lose my position otherwise. I will lose my benefit from this system. But the problem with that is, as we've been saying forever, the system will eventually put pressure on you too. It's like you know how many slaves they want? Is it half? Is it like a few? Or is it everybody?
They want every single person who's not a slave master.
Even the fucking elite.
So,
like, I want you to imagine the day where Elon Musk is strapped into a chair, like, what the fuck is going on? And there's like these Tesla bots coming and like implanting a Neuralink into his brain. And he's like, no. And like every fucking elite person is fucking put into a cocoon. Like, think about it. You watch The Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. There was no fucking human being running the show.
Right. Yeah.
It was all machines.
Yeah.
Like, that's where things are going. It's not like the elite can get out of it because they are just scrambling, trying to figure out, and all they're doing is out of fear, trying to put all these things in place to keep their position. But the things they're putting in place are being automated into making it so that nobody can cannot consent. Like if anybody had fucking read Isaac Asimov, like he already showed this is exactly what would happen with automation. Like that's the whole point of the iRobot short stories. He shows like a progression into that point.
You know, it's funny. It's like the only people who have read Isaac Asimov are like the people who are trying to create AI.
What's funny too is I saw this video. It was like why the 3 laws of robotics don't actually work. And I'm like, if you had read all the fucking books, you would know that was Asimov's fucking point. Like, read the books. That's what he, but he shows you like people don't actually read. They watched iRobot, the movie. Yeah. And they're like, see, I know about it. And it's like, no, you didn't actually read it. So it's like when you read history books and you're like, I know about history. It's like, no, you don't. You know, some fucking story that some authors made up that was approved by a government board to say, this is what we want children to learn. That should make you wonder.
History is so fascinating. Like real history is so fascinating. I was just reading the Gospel of Thomas and researching like the Council of Trent, right? And it's so interesting the way that they write.
They were like they were in the thing going, Master, to the Pope. They were like, the archons are telling us to remove that part about the archons in the Bible. And he's like, all right, get that one out of here. Yeah, okay. Isn't it? It's like
it's crazy because whenever you read it like on Wikipedia or Britannica or whatever, it's like, and yes, the canonical books of the Bible were confirmed, and it just like glazes over that part, and then the ritual rites. These are the important parts. You know, that we said that you know, you can pay for indulgences and things like that. It's just like, wait. Reverse back.
Like that's why they're like Pfizer and the FDA going like, okay, we're gonna go fast track this vaccine and so forth. You know, and you're like, what the fuck? That's the Bible?
Yeah. But it's cool. This is something that I thought was really relevant to what you just said. There's a line in here that says, Jesus said, don't lie and don't do what you hate, because all things are disclosed before heaven. After all, there's nothing hidden that will not be revealed, and there's nothing covered up that will remain undisclosed, right? And I'm saying that, like, I know you see it, but just to like break it down, it's like we're going along with all this bullshit because the consensus, the authority tells us this is what it is, even though in the back of your mind, you can really clearly see like, yo, this is really fucked up. This doesn't make sense. But if I say something, I'm going to be like the outcast. And that's going along with a lie. That's doing something.
There's some people who took the vaccine that you're thinking, man, why are these people, they're so brainwashed? And you're like, no, that was out of fear.
Yeah.
And now even a lot of those people, or some amount of them, are going like, oh, fuck, like, why did I do that? Like, oh, shit, you know, like they're seeing things now. Yeah. So you see, it's like a lot less people are on the side of the consensus than it seems. It's an artificial consensus.
Yes.
Dude, imagine all the people, like all the Christians, you read the Bible and stuff, complaining about like the authority, like, you know, choosing what should be talked about and what shouldn't be talked about and everything. And you're like, do you literally not understand the Bible? Do you literally, like, why don't you read the Gospel of Thomas?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Don't you realize like Apocrypha. Some fucking
okay.
Right? But it's like, no, but is it though?
I think so.
Because I don't think so. I think there's
what's your question, Drake?
It's apocryphal. It's in the Apocrypha.
Oh, I don't know.
But isn't there's a set of books? Okay, there's a set of books that the Catholics accept.
Yes.
But then there's like the Protestants accept other books as well. But then there's the books like the Gospel of Thomas, which is like a whole nother level of shit.
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
I might have the term wrong.
So I just looked at
okay.
Gospel of Thomas, and one of the like frequently asked questions is the Gospel of Thomas legitimate? And it says no major Christian group accepts this gospel as canonical. Is the word? Or
yeah, canonical. Yeah, it's not canon. It's like Marvel. Like you have a new character.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not canon. But it's interesting because there's a certain set of books, like you said, that the Catholic Church says yes, the Protestants say no, and then there's like other sets that are like the Protestants.
So, but
say,
even two authoritative sources can disagree on what's in there. So then, why the fuck is that even a relevant point to say? It's like, is it real? Is it true? Well, there's no authoritative sources that say it is, that
And-
accept it.
And the whole reason why this like council even formed was to be like, hey, we have to enforce like this guy Martin Luther is talking shit about us, and we have to just like cut this out. Like, okay,
When he
so
steps outside in Dallas to smoke that cigarette, we're gonna take him out. Oh no, wait, that was the wrong one. Sorry.
other Martin Luther.
Sorry, no, rewind.
but basically they were saying like, okay, he's got some legitimate challenges. We need to be more uniform. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this shit out. We're going to add this stuff in. This is okay. This is not okay. It took them, I think it was like 18 years to actually like get all these rules together. And they had like 40 bishops from different sees or dioceses from all around Europe and everything. When you look at it, it's just like,
See, but okay, isn't that natural when you're building a system?
it's just business.
So people, the problem is people will go, oh, see, but you shouldn't cut things out or whatever. And it's like, okay, so then you should just accept all information no matter what and not actually evaluate it with the common sense. Because when you look at what's in the Gospel of Thomas and you actually look at what it's saying, there's a lot more. Like, it's funny because when you read that stuff, it makes way more fucking sense than a lot of the stuff they kept in the Bible.
It
Right? You're
does.
like, okay, they left that out when there's all these good statements like that in there, but
Yeah.
they left in the part where it's literally like, is it a Kings or something where it's literally just like 40 pages of genealogy,
Yeah.
and you're like, why is this relevant to anything?
because it justifies why the kings are the mouthpiece of God. They were divinely ordained.
But then
Yeah.
later they get pissed off that people wanted a king. That's the whole point of Judges. I'm like, what the fuck? But it paints the picture. Just wait till you get to the end. It's like, why don't we just get to that part? The part where the guy's like, we need to create a system that's best for all, and then he gets killed, and everyone's like, oh no, he was a superhero. We can't do that.
You know what else is really crazy? Like there's a lot of parts within the Gospel of Thomas that are just like, that makes a lot of sense. And one of them is like they came up to Jesus and asked him, do we need to circumcise our kids? And he was like, if God wanted you to circumcise your kids, he would have left that part off. Like that's literally what it says. It's like, you need to circumcise your hearts or something like that. Like basically
They were like, okay.
They're like, okay, fast forward me 2,000 years and inject me with this thing.
Yeah. So you mean like mRNA technology in my heart? So you mean like myocarditis? That's what we need to do? That's all it
That's
is.
it.
It's the
That's
beast.
it.
You know, what's funny is you were talking about Gospel of Thomas this whole time. I was thinking of, although I know what you're referring to now, I was thinking of like the Dead Sea Scrolls and like the Gnostic. That's why I was joking
the
about
Gnostic.
the archons.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why I was
yeah,
joking
yeah,
about the archons, because I was thinking
Like
about the
the-
Gnostic texts, and that's a whole nother level that's not even at all acknowledged or anything.
like the Latin Vulgate, I think it's called, right? Like something like that.
Well, it's
But
not
yeah,
including any of that stuff.
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
like
yeah.
talking about it's like a whole nother myth of creation and everything, totally separate from.
It's supposed to be used that what I understood from it was that's supposed to be used to indoctrinate the pagans to get them to then accept the rest of the Bible. Like that's
But
the only like use
I've also-
that they have for it.
What
yeah.
I've also heard though was that Jesus was actually one of those. He was like an Essene, right? I think that's what it was. He was like from that group or something, or maybe it was John the Baptist or one of these guys or whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's like all this history that you're not taught because it's like it would lead you down a different path.
Hmm.
You see what I mean? Than just going along with the authority.
Right. And then you want to go to church and support their cash flow by donating every week.
Which, by the way, just so you're aware, today is October 2nd. So the Pope did say that he wanted all cash on hand for all the churches that the Vatican oversees to be deposited into the Vatican Bank by September 3rd. At this point, if you have not deposited your cash reserves or cash flows, you are
You need to do that now. Like
yeah, your balance is
probably
overdue.
not gonna get any.
You're about to get
You're gonna be cut out from
excommunicated.
all the child sacrifices for like a year.
say
Not
that
forever. Come on, we're not evil. Okay, like for a year.
It's terrible.
Satan needs his bank account. Did y'all see this thing about the New Zealand Prime Minister at the UN? I sent y'all that one too.
Oh yeah. Where she's
Talking about the internet
basically-
censorship.
Yeah, she doesn't say internet censorship explicitly,
Well, yeah.
but she does say, the ability for people to say whatever they want is a weapon of war.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like they say all the things around it without explicitly saying it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like,
Listen,
so, okay,
I'm not
connect that
saying-
dot.
Yeah.
Connect that dot to the point with the California law,
Yeah.
right? Where they're
Yeah.
saying you can't go against the medical consensus. And then she's over here saying that we can't allow people just to say whatever they want.
Mhm.
Right. And so you look at all these points, and it's always said in a way where it kind of seems reasonable.
It does. It does. Like it didn't seem like completely crazy the way that she said it.
But it's always based on a boogeyman.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Are you sure it's not pronounced bogeyman?
It might be.
No,
It
it's
might
bogey- I say
Um,
bogeyman.
I think if you're British, they call it a bogeyman.
I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is.
Or if you're in the Navy,
Wait, why in the Navy? I don't get that one.
there's like a bogey on your six.
Oh God.
Anyways, what I don't even remember what we're talking about now.
There's always got to be a boogeyman.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. That's the whole point. Oh, yeah. That reminds me of that other point. That's what it was. I was watching something. They were talking about all the right-wing extremism that's going on in the US, like the MAGA, this and all that, and trying to create this point because apparently they did this research and showed that if Biden runs for his next term on the economy or even the Democrats, they all lose if it's about what people care about. But if it's a referendum on stopping extremism, then they can win. So that's why they're ramping up all of this points about all this extremism and so forth, right? And apparently there's all these cases they're saying, look, in all these different states, there's all these extremist groups that are being investigated by the FBI. But what they were showing from some report was that actually they're all being initiated by the Washington field office. So it's like the Washington field office is putting pressure on local places to go, yeah, you should open up a file on that, even though it's like the person just attended the fucking the rally or whatever on January 6th. But they'll be like, yeah, you need to open up a file on that and investigate it. So they're using that to be like, see, look, there's all these cases of extremism that are being investigated and so forth, but it's all coming from the Washington field office, which is using it as a political weapon to be able to say, here's the evidence that there's all this extremism. So then you got to say, like, that's why we have to as we get closer to the election, we need to fight misinformation because there's lots of people out there who are peddling all this misinformation and and extremism and all this stuff. And we have to, on YouTube, cut out the extremism and everything.
Wow.
When the interesting thing is, if you just let it be a free, open point, I guarantee you 99% of all of the videos and everything would be talking about all this shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it would be massive. They have to throttle it.
Yeah.
People don't. The problem is, even if people have access to all that information, they don't know what to do. They're still just going to complain that the government is not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And if they vote in like a Trump, like we talked about before, how is that the savior?
Right. Right.
Because how can one person do anything if everybody else in the government and in the bureaucracy and everything isn't operating based on principle? You can't stop anything.
Also, really interesting. Just on that point of Trump, it's like there were so many policies that was started that during Trump's presidency that the average person would not agree with, or even
I think even that the Amish guy, Amos thing.
Yeah.
That point started under, of course, it's not to say that Trump is
it's not to say that he did it,
how
but
can he
it's the
fucking pay
point that's
attention
like
to all of
he's
those
not the
points?
savior. Like
Right.
he's not going to be able to save every single, like, oh, and he saw this and he saw that. What a great guy. Like, it's like, he's a human being. Just like
And they're
all of us.
complaining, like, what about the ATF rules about pistol braces? And it's like, how the fuck is the president going to be able to deal with all that? That's why there's a bureaucracy. That's why it's so spread out.
Right.
And those people who are in there have real power because they can make rules.
There was this anarchist. I was watching Human Resources just yesterday, and there was this anarchist in like Soviet Russia times. I forget the guy's exact name because it was Russian. I'm not going to bother myself with that.
Boris.
Yeah. but this guy was basically saying, the major governments are going to go one of two ways, right? They're either going to become like really socialists, and become really authoritarian, or there's going to be a group of intelligentsia that realizes that they are actually the ones in power, and to have real power over the entire government would be to be in those positions where you get to stay in and you're not voted in or whatever like that. And they're the ones who are actually going to run the things. And it's really obvious now that like, oh, this guy's prediction came true. I think it was Noam Chomsky who was talking about this anarchist, and just bringing up this point of like, it happened to be a really accurate prediction because, most predictions like that, they're like, whatever. But this actually happened to be the case here in the States, where we have this group or this bureaucracy that's really the ones who like, they have their agenda, they're doing their thing, regardless of who's president, who's not president, whatever. They don't give a fuck. They're just like, okay, yeah, and we're just going to continue on with our forever wars. We're going to continue on because this makes us money. Continue making people like confused or whatever. Like, who gives a shit about them? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones in power. We're the ones in control. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that point up in connection to what you were saying.
Right, but like they don't see how it's all headed towards a cliff.
Right.
It's not like we can just forever go on and on with wars and having this power structure. It's like we're literally running out of time due to a variety of things, but mainly AI automation, as well as just all the changes happening in the environment and in general, like human culture, and everything just keeps and consciousness, really. It's like consciousness has gone out of control. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. And the most insane part about it, and I'm saying this from the perspective of like, I was there, is that like, you think, or people in general think that what they're doing is their own will, is their own direction. And it's like, it's going against the government. Actually, like, I just watched something that was like, I was just looking at somebody's, what are those banners on Facebook, the circular things that people have around their
profile. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. And wait, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, let me just finish this point, and then we can jump.
Yeah, I'm just like, what?
Like the I got
Christine's messaging us
thing.
Yeah, like those little circle things that go around it.
Yeah, exactly. And one of them said, I'm skeptical of authority and I got the vaccine. And I was like, that is the most retarded thing. Mitch, I think you should get one of these profile things, one of these profile banners. And it should say,
because I'm skeptical and I did not get the vaccine.
No, I was going to say, it should say, I had a baby.
No, I did not have the baby. I don't care what people try and tell you. I cannot. Men cannot have babies. One of the I'm still so confused about is all these.
I thought you were progressive.
Okay, hold on. First of all, Mitch, you need to have a whole YouTube channel where every video you just start like that. You want to know what I'm so confused about? That is like, that's a format. I'm telling you.
Okay, I'll do it.
I don't know what I'm still confused about.
Okay, I'm so fucking confused about these guys that are like now apparently getting breasts and stuff, and then they're like trying to breastfeed. So it's like a dude, but they're pretending to be a woman. They've even manipulated their body, and they're like with a baby. I'm like, one, what the fuck is that baby feeding off of? Two, like, is it like they can't have a baby, right? Like you can't put in a vagina in a uterus.
They stole the baby.
they or adopted it, whatever. But I'm just like,
actually like these butt plug babies that are currently are available so that it can mimic the act of birth in a male.
What?
Yes.
So you insert this baby shaped.
Literally, just go take a dump if you want to do that.
Like
poor baby.
Really hard to make a baby in an asshole.
You guys, this is why I built Self Perfected. One of the many million reasons because there are babies out there being fucking abused right now by adults that are insane, that are thinking that I am a man, I want to be a woman, because in my mind, and it's like, look, if you're an adult and you've come to that decision and you want to do that and not harm other people, okay, that's like a separate conversation.
Okay,
When
when
you
you're still
start-
mentally disordered. Okay.
Right.
Right. When you're now bringing a baby into the mix and now you're getting all this attention and everything, like that is just an atrocity, really. And so
Where are we at? Where are we at in society when we get to the point where it's no longer a novelty and people are just like, no, why was I doing this?
Right. And like, okay, I think of this often too, is like when you die and, you know, what exactly happens, you know, do you come back in another body, whatever. I like to look at it as, imagine I'm here to live my life so effectively that in the moment that I die, it's like me as life will judge myself. And then in that moment, whether it's my being or another being or whatever, just like imagine that that being is now born as a baby and it comes out. But now, because of the life I lived, that baby's either going to be born into a system that's pretty cool and they can get educated and they have enough food and there's not war and it's like, you know, decent setup. Or you're getting born as a butt plug baby, whatever the fuck that is that Christine just told us about, and you're covered in shit when you come out. And now you don't even have a mom. You have this guy who thinks he's a mom, but is not a mom. I guarantee you there's no guy. It's like, okay, sure, you manipulate your chest, so now it looks like you got boobs. Guess what? You still got a fucking brain. You got organs. You got DNA. You got genetics. You have so much stuff that's also either man or woman program.
And I thought it was all just about how you identify anyways. Why do you need the breasts and stuff? Like,
yeah,
if it's your subjective reality is important, why do you need to go? It's like so self-contradictory.
right. It's insanity. And so, and the fact that that is what gets the headlines instead of like Max having a fucking amazing video about mathematics for like 15 minutes. He's doing math that like the average 14-year-old can't do. It's like that should be mainstream. Obviously it's not. I know it's not, but I see that in it. It is perplexing.
It's not,
but nonetheless,
but it will be. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And it's perplexing, but nonetheless, it's like, that's why we do the podcast, right? That's why I build the business. That's why me and Jess just had our baby. You know, she delivered the baby. I was there, you know, I was, you know, I'm like, they're there, buddy. He's like crying at night. I'm like trying to soothe him. And I'm like, it's just different if you got tits, straight up. You know, no amount of my comforting gets him to stop crying. So
weird how that works. And then the guys are like, well, I'll just have some fake tits and then that'll work. And you're like, yeah, that kid's going to cry for other reasons.
This doesn't make sense.
You know, and it's sad because it's like, yes, we want people to feel included and to feel good about being alive. It's just the way in which it's done. They don't realize that they're being manipulated by a system to think that's the solution when it's not, so that other things can be put in. It's like the USDA story. The transgender is just the next step where it's like, okay, but then people are going to get tired of that. And then it's the metaverse. And then it's, you're going to put your children into that. And then they're going to have their own fantasy worlds and just all this kind of stuff. Like, read The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. Like, it fucking really goes into all the detail of, if you're just trying to create a world that's based on survival only, and it's all fantasy, what that really is.
Yeah, and just like trying to feel good all the time, and just like engineering
No principle.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting when you read those books? You're like, if they would just look at this from the perspective of principle, none of this would be happening. You know what I mean? You're like,
I know. If they just if every one of them had just had techno tutor and just used the damn thing and had the principles with it, it's like, gosh, this just not would not be so fucked. It would actually be great. So.
It's incumbent upon us, the ones who are walking the process initially, to be stable for those who are not yet. Like, if we can't even be stable within just the basic points of what we're doing, then how the fuck is that? I mean, it's like, ask yourself, who's more stable in their principles? You or Klaus Schwab? You or Bill Gates? People say like, well, they don't have principles. They do have principles. They just have principles that are not best. It's not about having principles. It's about having principles that are best for all. Right? It's about, that's the principles. So when you look at it from that perspective, there can't be disagreement. Right? At the end of the day, if you don't, like everyone's going to suffer. Right.
Yeah.
How do we end that on a positive note? I have no idea.
Well, it's pretty rewarding when you do it right. You know,
It's like,
but it's
yeah,
like
it's like
super fun.
people don't like religion because like, oh, he's threatening you about hell and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. Hell is a reality. We got to really actually consider that. And it's not so much about fearing it. It's just like, stop actively creating it. Because that's what everyone's doing. It's not like we're afraid of going to hell. It's that we're actively creating that by not making decisions that are based on real principles and support and give as you want to receive. It's just self-interest only.
Yeah.
And the self-interest point, the ego will take us to the point where we feel really great, and then it'll pull everything from us, and then it'll test us like, are we going to actually keep standing even in spite of the feelings or not? Right? I mean, how much do you think Klaus Schwab and them are tested? Imagine waking up every day and like everyone thinks you're the most evil fucking person on the planet.
Yeah.
But still going forward. So we have to be that effective, right? Not swaying, not getting swayed by some little thing.
Right. And just like, I think, at least for me, because I got to jump here in a moment, but the phrase, we say it often, but it's worthy of repeating, is what you focus on grows. And so just really remember that, like, you know, we can talk about the Amos Miller and fucking China and all this stuff. And yeah, you need to look at it. You need to understand the severity of what's at play right now. And then like this week, today, what are you going to do to set yourself up so that you're building systematically the system that's going to eventually over time take care of everybody, right? I mean, that's why I do TechnoTutor. That's why I use the tools. You know, that's why I build my business, because I see there's no fucking answer in the system, and I'm not thinking like an employee slave, but it's taken me a process to get out of that. It's like, no, I run a business and I can now provide meaningful work for people. So I'm very clear on what I'm going to do every week. And I know by next Sunday, I'm going to have more money. I'm going to have more people involved. It's going to be more awesome. However, it also involves every single person listening to this and all the people around you, is keep focusing on what's that next step, you know, whether it feels good or not. Sometimes it'll feel good. Sometimes it won't feel good. Who fucking cares? You know, apply what's best and you'll get the best result. And then you'll eventually feel the best too.
How is it with the baby, Mitch?
It's epic. It's very fun. It's very content baby. I don't know. The 3 a.m. crying thing is kind of, you know, a little testing, but you know, the grand scheme of things, like I woke up this morning to let our chickens out and stuff. And I'm like looking, it's like a beautiful fall day. The sun's coming up. I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm here. I don't have to worry about getting a drone strike right now, or like that, you know, we have fucking like, I can leave my home, right? It's not like a quarantine or some bullshit. And I just looked at that and I was like, smiled for a moment, took a deep breath, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do, because that's what I got to do. You know, because it's like, I'm in this position, not so I can just be like, oh, my life's great. Yay. It's like, I'm in this position realizing the magnitude of what's at stake. I'm here to support other people to do the same and go way beyond, you know, what I've done.
Well said. I'll end my part on this. This morning I woke up and, well, I was already awake at this point, but the kids woke up, and then Seneca comes in the room. She has one of her ballet dresses on, and she's got a stuffed toy animal, like a stuffed rat toy animal she has, and then like something else and like some like electronic circuit things. And she goes, Cameron, today's my birthday. I'm 4 years old. And I was like, yeah, that's right. She goes, Max gave me some presents. And it was like all of her own toys. You know what I mean? Like Max had given her like her toys, and like, but it was just so cute, like how they're like giving each other like their own toys as like their presents, you know? It was just really cool. So I know exactly what you mean. It's like those points that are to be grateful for, you know, because it does get challenging. And like with the baby, it'll become challenging. And then the 3 a.m. crying won't be the problem anymore. It'll be something else. But it's like imagining going, well, you know what? All this principal stuff, yeah, whatever. Look, I'm just going to get a babysitter and let them deal with it, you know, and then get a nanny and go put them in daycare, and I'll just put them in school. And it's like, you know what? Doing it the best way is difficult. But to me, it's more difficult to face myself having not done it the best way. Do you know what I mean? Like realizing what
and
you're
you
creating is
fucked
not
over
best.
the other person.
That's
Like,
what I'm saying.
yeah, like then they look at you one day and they're like, wow, Dad, Like, what the fuck?
And then when you reincarnate, that's your grandpa or your dad.
Mhm.
That's how
Really
it should be. It should just be like you have a kid and then that's like your parent or the next life or whatever. That would be an effective system. You'd probably figure shit out real fast.
Real quick. You'd be like, okay, wait. Hey, dad, it's me. It's me, your dad from before. Remember?
Hey,
Okay,
dad,
anyway.
it's me, dad. Also, you might remember me as great granddad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back again. Yeah.
Right. Like, actually, like, really take a moment today to look at that, everybody. Like, imagine when you die, you're just some other little baby now that pops out somewhere randomly in the world. And guess what? The average human being, their life fucking sucks right now. So if you have time to listen to the podcast or be part of this group, or you even have access to Facebook, or you even have a bank account or running water, like, your life is decent. So use it and join us, right? Grow this so we can change the system so that in 20 years, the average kid can be born and not be, stabbed full of vaccines and fucking brainwashed and indoctrinated and put into the metaverse. It's like, how about the kid just has a really cool, dignified life from day one? Because it's possible. We're proving it.
And that accumulates and goes way beyond what people can even imagine.
Right. And then when
final
have kids,
yeah,
like, they're going to be truly elite, but in the best way.
You mean when they have you?
Yeah,
Have
exactly.
you.
Well,
When your kids have
I'm
you.
planning on living a long time, man. So
Oh yeah, I guess that would
it's
really
a
work.
cycle.
It's like your kids are like, oh, I want to have a kid now. You're like, oh well, I guess I better get in the suicide chamber.
We'll see you guys.
I didn't really think it that far through. You can't have more than one kid.
That's a great story, actually. We should write that.
Yeah, the suicide.
Hey.
the
So we'll have our
suicide-
own science fiction publishing company someday.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
See you guys.
Other points.
All
Bye.
right. That's all.